Yo, another week, another fight podcast. As always, it's your boy Mehran. I'm here with the illustrious Dave. Say what's up, man.
What's going on, everybody?
Man, it's been a weekend of title fights, and it's been exciting title fights for which we are thankful.
Yeah, it was a really, really good week for fights in general. Both the pay-per-views, not completely loaded with a lot of star power. There were a lot of entertaining fights throughout all of them.
The top end of both cards, I think, were important and fun to watch,
Mhm.
which is what you want out of a pay-per-view at the very least. Let's actually start this time with boxing and the Charlo doubleheader, because I think the two fights at the top of that card, so the two Charlo brothers, have a lot of interesting implications and a lot of cool stuff happening around them.
Yeah, let's start with final fight, I guess. So,
Yeah.
Jermall Charlo versus Jeison Rosario.
What
That
an
was a good
ending.
fight.
That was a good fight, but what an ending, right?
Yeah. You want to start there?
Yeah, let's start at the end. So that was a very interesting. So he jabs high and then he jabs low, which is very common, right?
Mhm.
You know, you go high low, and he hits him in the solar plexus, and it looks like it just knocks the wind out of him.
Yeah.
It's like he just got tackled.
I've never seen anything like that before in like that level of competition.
That is true. Like at that high level, I was rethinking what you
I've
said
seen
last
guys get the wind knocked out of them
time.
with punches. I've never seen someone get the wind knocked out of them with a stab jab to the body. Ever.
Yeah. It either like I think the text message you sent me about with the tweet about how like, hey, maybe he was exhaling or something has to be true.
Because I feel like, and I don't want to downplay it because I can't find the proper word for it, but it was kind of like a lucky shot. Not that it wasn't.
It was intentional, but it was lucky in its effect.
Yeah, like that doesn't that's not something that you're going to see. You might not see that ever again.
That is atypical, I think is the word you're looking for. Yeah. That's atypical of a stab jab to the body. A stab jab to the body is used to set up a heavy right hand if you're, orthodox, right? Mm-hmm. That you can come back over the top with, or to set up another punch, right? It doesn't have to be a heavy right hand. It could be anything. But it's meant to like change levels and get you thinking. It's not meant to finish you.
Yeah. So that was one. I don't know if you remember that was scary.
Yeah, he like I crumpled.
You can actually hear Derek James at the end when they're like settling everything down. He was like, "Yo, I think he had a seizure or something." Like because it looked like his body convulsed.
Yeah, it was shaking. Something went wrong there.
I don't know. I'm sure you had the wind knocked out of you for a variety.
It sucks.
It's one of the worst, like most uncomfortable feelings ever. It feels like you're drowning in air.
That's a great way to describe it. It feels exactly like that, like you're drowning in air.
It was so crazy though, because it was just like, he had just gotten hurt. Cool. End of the round. They come back out and it's just like stab jab to the body and he's done. And you're like, what the hell just happened?
Do you think maybe he had an internal injury from earlier in the fight?
Maybe. Jermall was going to the body for sure, but I didn't think that he was going to the body like that much where it was like accumulation. I think it was
maybe he has a messed up rib or something, like
it was on the belt line.
I know. That's why I'm so confused because it's like I don't know what you could hit down there.
You can get hit there. Like I've gotten hit there with a soccer ball, and like it hurts. You'll knock the wind out of you.
No, I'm not doubting that, but what I'm curious about is like, was there like when you get hit there, like on the belt line, you can definitely get the wind knocked out of you, but it doesn't cause you to have that reaction.
Yeah, maybe it triggered something
else up here.
Yeah, because that was really concerning. I was like, what is going on? Because he was convulsing. After a while, it definitely looked like he was trying to gasp for air. Like
yeah,
get the wind knocked out of you. But like
that was a little more
the
normal.
Initial like reaction to it was very unordinary.
He crumpled like completely, like, which happens when you get the wind knocked out of you. Sometimes, like the air goes out of you and you crumple down. But what I was more interested about now that I have my fight straight is he was getting beat up that whole fight.
Mm-hmm.
Like he
made it competitive. I thought
it was a competitive beating.
Yeah, I thought at some point, I think he got knocked down in the first round, so I was 10-8, and then I thought I thought that he had won. Like I stopped in the fifth. I thought he got 2 rounds out of there.
Didn't he get wobbled in another round?
The round he got stunned
Round
a little
4?
bit. Yeah, and then he got hurt. He got dropped, and did it end in the 6th? I can't remember.
I think it might
It
have
ended
been
in the 8th. So in the
eight.
so in the 6th round, he got hurt bad.
Okay, that's probably what I'm thinking of then. Yeah.
And then he survived the 7th, and then that's when he got hit with the jab in the 8th.
I wish these fights weren't so damn late.
Yeah.
Aside.
And they're pay-per-view, so it's not like we can go back and rewatch them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was a great showing by Charlo.
Yeah. I think that all of the stuff that I had been complaining about, he kind of retooled a little bit. There was still some, he was reaching with some of them punches. And I think that's just going to be a part of his style from here on out.
He was also looking for a knockout, I feel like.
Yeah.
Like, he was definitely looking for a knockout victory to that fight.
Yeah, and that's kind of how he fights now. He looks for a knockout, which I don't necessarily like, but there are moments where he was boxing like the Jermall Charlo that I remember.
More technical.
Yeah.
A little less reliant on athleticism and going forward. It was interesting, right? There were flashes of each. What does this mean for the division?
I mean, it's interesting because he hasn't really fought. I mean, he's fought everybody except for all the major players, except for Hurd. He hasn't fought Hurd. He hasn't fought Julian Williams, and he hasn't fought Brian Carlos Castano. And he hasn't fought Lara. He has not fought Lara. There's Randy Lara, for people don't know what I'm talking about. So I feel like he has a very strong resume at 154. He's beaten almost everybody of note, including his now mandatory challenger, Erickson Lubin. I still want to see the Hurd fight, even though it's at far less stakes than when the fight was first floated. I can't. A lot of people want to count out Tony Harrison and Julian Williams because of their chins or their stamina or whatever, but I think with their level of skill, you can't count them out at any fight, no matter what.
Julian Williams is a good boxer.
He might be a great boxer.
Yeah, but I watch him. He's a good boxer. I know that's a weird statement to make, but I feel like people don't understand. Boxing wise, he knows how to box. Mm-hmm. When you watch him, you're just like, oh yes, this guy fundamentally sound, technically sound.
Yeah, he just has a lot of holes in his defense, and I think he gets overconfident, and that's what causes him to.
That's what gets him is he doesn't stick to that soundness, you know.
And I think there's some of the same things about that you could say about Tony Harrison too, who, no matter what, I know belts and Charlo beat him and he beat Charlo, whatever, but I think skill wise, I think Tony Harrison is by far the best skilled boxer in that division.
When you say that, that's a function of his style.
Yeah.
Right.
He's a Kronk fighter or
exactly like
fighter.
That is a function of his style.
Yeah.
Is what I'm getting at. So it's he's very, very good at implementing his style into fights, which is the Kronk style. Mm-hmm. And I think as a result of that, that is why people say, as from a skill perspective, that is why he's the most skilled at that weight.
Yeah, and when guys that make other boxers look bad usually are for two reasons. Either they're really awkward or they're really good. And Tony Harrison is one of those guys that's really good.
Agreed.
But yeah, so I think Jermall, he has a lot of options at 154. Like I said, he's never fought J-Rock, and J-Rock's going to be back for sure. The Lubin fight is probably next.
He has to fight that, right?
Yeah, I think so. I'm not sure, but I'm pretty sure that's going to be the next fight.
Because Lubin just won a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, last week.
A week ago, yeah.
And then Hurd is still there. I'm surprised he doesn't have a fight scheduled, but yeah, he's still there too. And personally, I think the sleeper in that division is Brian Carlos Castano. Argentinian fight, he's undefeated. He has one draw to Arizona de Lara in a very weird fight. He's the mandatory for the WBO belt, who is Patrick Teixeira with Golden Boy is the titleist there. If he beats Teixeira, I think that that's going to be a really, really good fight because he's kind of similar to Sergiy Derevyanchenko. Like he's short. I think he's like 5'6" for that weight. But he's
just short in general. I'm 5'6". We're short people. It's fine.
Yeah, he's very good. I think he's better like skill wise than Sergiy Derevyanchenko, and I also believe he beat Sergiy Derevyanchenko in the amateur. He has an outstanding amateur background.
He's Argentinian, you said?
Yeah, he beat Errol Spence. He beat a lot of guys in the amateurs.
Oh wow!
So I think that that's going to be a really good fight if he can get that WBO belt, and then they can have a complete
unification belt.
Unification, yeah. So I'm excited for Jermall. I think he definitely had the performance of the card, and I think it's almost time. If not time, it's definitely almost time to start talking about him in the pound for pound rankings,
I think so too. Now, moving on to Jermall. Jermall Charlo had an interesting night. I think a tougher night than most people are admitting to. But that was a great fight.
It was a great fight.
Yeah.
I agree with you. I had it 7-5, and I thought it could go either way. Because I think people really like Jermall Charlo, and I also really like Jermall Charlo. So, and
he's very marketable. Like future of boxing, all that. He's very good at it.
Yeah, and he has the skills to back it up too.
For sure. But go ahead. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, it's all good. He did a lot of good things in that fight. His jab was on point. He might have the best jab in the game.
That thing was working so well for him, right? When all else was failing, even in situations where it doesn't look like he's winning, he could use that jab whenever. It was crisp.
Yeah, and he's always had a good jab. His jab, and another thing about his jab is powerful. Like his jab is as strong as a power punch. And and you could tell also, side note, Sergiy Derevyanchenko I don't know what his chin is made out of.
Granite, steel, concrete.
Yeah, all the above, because he took a beating. And even though it was a close fight, he took a lot of punishment in that fight.
So this fight, and I think was so entertaining because, yes, Sergiy took a lot of punishment, but he also doled out a fair amount of punishment too, in my opinion, right? He did a very good job of keeping it close, did a very good job of negating the height difference, got his way to the inside, definitely took some rounds. I think people are definitely fanboying a little bit over Charlo and saying like, oh yeah, it was 5-1 going into the 6th. And I'm just like, it is? I don't have it like that. Like there's a lot of people who I think are confused. I think Charlo did amazing and definitely earned this victory, but it was very interesting to watch him sweat.
I think that people it was a very much a case of like scoring versus like effective punching, I think.
Talk about that a little.
So boxing has a lot of I guess MMA has more so like typically the guy that lands more strikes wins the round, at least in the UFC.
Yeah, that's true. For UFC rules later.
Boxing, it varies a little bit. There was a fight on the undercard where a guy won, and he literally landed 100 less punches than the guy he fought, and he still won. So, I think boxing scoring is more so. It really also depends on the judge. Like some judges favor aggression, some judges favor ring generalship, some favor output and landed punches, some favor effective punches. So
it's pretty subjective, right?
Yeah. So there were rounds where Jermall Charlo landed powerful shots that visibly shook up Sergiy Derevyanchenko, and judges would give him rounds of that, which is fine, which is why I have no problem with the outcome. But there were also a lot of very close rounds where Sergiy Derevyanchenko's work rate and combination punches on the inside, he was scoring a lot with them. And they may not. So a lot of his punches hurt Jermall Charlo, but a lot of them were just scoring punches. But he's still racking up points that way, and that's kind of how I see it: is like landing punches and racking up points. So that's why I might have more rounds to Sergiy Derevyanchenko than most other people. But either way, no matter what you like in that fight, you got it.
Right, exactly. And it was a great showcase of both sides of the coin. And I think you're right in that, yes, Charlo did much more damage and definitely, in my opinion, deserved to win that fight and was truly a great performance. But I think what Sergiy did is he established the fact that he belongs there, right?
Mm-hmm.
This was a fight he definitely belonged in. He was competitive in, and it was really exciting to watch.
Yeah, I was seeing a lot of tweets where people were like, "Oh, he's gonna be stopped in the 9th," and I'm just like, "Yo, are you watching this guy?" Like,
Yeah,
like he got hurt a few times, but it was just like, "Yo, he's gonna survive this." There was never a moment where I was like, "I don't think that he's gonna survive this fight."
exactly. And where does this leave like Charlo now? Because he had a good performance. I think a solid performance.
I mean, I thought this was like I don't know if I want to call it a career-defining fight, but I think this is his established fight at 154. Like, he's undeniable at that weight now, I think.
What do you mean by that? Because, like, I feel like this was a solid win, but it wasn't like him going in and destroying somebody.
Well, he beat a top 5 middleweight. And you could argue that he beat him more definitively than Danny Jacobs and Triple G. He definitely beat him more definitively than Triple G because I thought Triple G lost that fight, and I'll maintain that forever. But he beat him better than both of those guys. And, you know, I think that a lot of guys at that weight can't beat Sergiy Derevyanchenko. Also, just the fact that he hasn't had a lot of good fights at 160. So like, this is like his like. So there were questions from people I kind of think weren't unfair, but like, does he belong at this weight? Like, is he a player at this weight for real? And like, this establishes the fact that like, yeah, he beat a top 5 guy at middleweight, and he's undeniable now. There's a lot of available fights. Whether they're going to happen, I'm not sure. There's Demetrius Andrade, who's at that weight. There's Canelo, I guess, is still there. He's like teetering.
That's what people were yelling for. People were yelling for Canelo.
People yelling for Triple G too.
Which, I think would be a good fight.
Yeah.
I think Charlo would win, but I think it would be actually exciting to watch and could happen.
Yeah, I think it could happen. I think that, especially with the zone up in the air.
Yeah. I
think there's a lot of potential for those fights to occur. I do think his next fight is going to be Chris Eubank Jr. in the UK. That's a fun one. If coronavirus is done.
That's a fun fight, though.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, Eubank's nothing special to me, but I think that it's a fun fight. It's going to be all action, and he can make a ton of money if they have it in the UK.
That is true. He can definitely make a ton of money. I would like to see Triple G. I think that would be a great fight, another career-defining fight, as you put it, because, you know, like it or not, Triple G has a pretty highly touted legacy for some reason.
Yeah, I think that's a good fight, a winnable fight, but still, it will still be competitive. So
for sure, and yeah, because Triple G is a great boxer. We're not trying to shit on Triple G, but I think Charlo is a cut above
at this
point, especially. Yeah, so they were great fights in terms of championship boxing fights from a perspective of both eye candy for fans who are maybe more casual and for people who are a lot more technical.
Yeah. You know, I paid for it. And I didn't feel like I wasted my money except for that weird intermission thing. But
yeah, that's the only thing that gets me about this is if they had just done that back to back, I would have been so much higher on this card. You know? Like, I don't know does anyone know the reason they do this?
I don't know. 'Cause I know back in the day, there were like time limits on pay-per-views.
So would you have to start a new one, or like you have to get?
I don't know, because remember, I forgot what. I don't know if you remember, but there was like a pay-per-view. It was a Tito Ortiz pay-per-view with the UFC, and it was like one of the most infamous ones because it was like all decisions.
Yes.
And because it was all decisions, it actually like cut off in the middle of the final fight.
But that doesn't happen anymore.
Right. So I don't know why they did that. I really don't.
Anyways, if anyone has any answers, please feel free to add us.
Oh, no, I know why they had the doubleheader. They had the doubleheader because they wanted the Charlo brothers wanted to have it so that they were technically headlining their own cards. They didn't want to be like the co-main event to the brother, basically.
No, doubleheader is fine, but why do you need an hour in between them?
Fuck if I know.
Like, does that like make them feel better about the separation? Like, I don't know.
I don't know. I'm cool with it. I'm cool with an exec at PBC. I'll ask him.
Yeah, well, feel free to give us an answer, an exclusive answer here in the pod. So on the other side of things, on the UFC side of things, we also had 2 title fights. Also very interesting things happening. Let's start with Dominick Reyes versus Jan Blachowicz. This was a great fight. I actually really enjoyed this. It reinvigorated my love of the light heavyweight division because after Jon Jones vacates his title, you're just kind of like, who cares about this, right? Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of people going into this were like, who cares about this? But it ended up being one of the most exciting fights on the card, and it showed why Jan Blachowicz has had such a long career and why he deserves to be here. You know?
It's a feel-good story, man.
It is.
Like, he's one fighter that has not had anything handed to him at all.
Just worked for it.
Like, I think he was like, at one point, he was like 2-4 in the UFC.
Yep.
And then he rattled off. He's been 8-1 since he was 2-4. He only lost to Thiago Santos.
Yep, the only person he's ever lost to is Santos, and that's great because Santos is a contender and can be his first title defense. Mm-hmm. The fight itself, it was a clinic on what happens when you take someone who's very athletic and, you know, you give them MMA skills. They can get to the top very quick, but once you get to the top and you start fighting those elite level people who have been doing combat sports since they were little, who have led long 20 years careers in some sort of specialization, how that will kind of fail short, right? Dominick Reyes is a great fighter. There's no doubt there. You don't get to the, Jon Jones fight without being a great fighter. But he's a transplant. He's a transplant from football who, again, learned MMA relatively recently compared to how long Jan Blachowicz has been fighting, right? Mm-hmm. And as that's kind of showed in this fight. It showed in the shot selection. It showed in the way they adjusted or didn't adjust throughout the fight. It showed in the sort of comfortability during the fight. One thing you notice when you're watching this is Jan Blachowicz was super comfortable striking and super comfortable putting together his different combinations like he had been doing it since he was 12, which he probably has been, And as a result of that, Dominick Reyes wasn't ready for that level of skill and technicality. You can't just always rely on athleticism, right? You can't just always rely on the fact that you're a superior athlete with, relatively new skills. It's not to say, Dominick Reyes is a bad fighter. He's going to get better at MMA and he's going to be amazing, especially if he continues to keep his athleticism as he ages into his career. But when you have someone that's been striking for so long, that's been in such a specialization for so long, they're going to shine against an opponent who doesn't necessarily know how to use his toolbox yet.
Right. So, like, if you're comparing it to, like, the Jon Jones fight, Jon Jones obviously has much more MMA experience than Dominick Reyes, but you could kind of argue that they're similar in terms of, like, how they got into MMA.
Agreed. Yeah,
like,
I think so
they're both, like, athletic freaks. Jon Jones just had the wrestling background that helped him translate over to MMA better than probably Dominick Reyes would. But, so when they're fighting, it's kind of like, obviously there's a higher level there with Jon Jones, but, the approach is similar enough that Reyes could figure that out, I think, especially at the way that Jon Jones fights now.
Yes, I was going to say, I think the other thing there is that he was fighting a Jon Jones that was tired of fighting that division. Mm-hmm. And, Jon Jones won that fight. So, like, say what you will. Like, yes, Reyes won the first 2 rounds for sure. But at the end of the day, on the record books, and I watched back the fight, Jon Jones did win that fight. And Reyes, I don't think, learned from it in the way that he should have.
Mm-hmm. I think he's, he's young. He has that, like, young confidence. Mm-hmm. Whereas, like, I think he still believes that he should be the champion, or, like, leading into the fight, he believed that he was the rightful champion. So he
Uncrowned
I
king.
feel like he came in with that arrogance.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, this is just a formality here. And like, there's Jan Blachowicz is a lot of things. One thing that he is not is a formality.
Not at all.
Yeah.
And
Corey Anderson thought he was a formality.
Look what happened to him.
Yeah, so,
now he's in Bellator, which is wild. Right? Like, this is the dude that sent Corey Anderson, the guy that was going to beat John Jones, to Bellator. You'd think he'd get some respect, but people did not put respect on his name before this, but they're definitely going to have to do it now. He's a champ. I think this Thiago Santos thing, if Thiago comes back, is going to be a great fight because they're both really high level and, they've already fought once before. It'll be good for, for everyone to take it seriously. And the right thing happened, right? This fight was just such a clinic on good striking, good combinations, putting stuff together, good rhythm. And it was a perfect example of how you have to adjust round to round, right?
Mm-hmm.
Dominick Reyes didn't adjust at all. He just kept going out there trying to do the same thing.
Yeah, man. Oh, the image of his left side, I think it was left, right?
Oh, yeah.
Whatever. His body got fucked up. Like,
those
I've
body
never
kicks,
seen,
man.
Yeah, I've never seen anything like that. I don't know what Jan's legs are made out of, but he destroyed that side. Like, I thought he was gonna pop open at some point.
It must have been some sort of pop blood vessel or something that he kicked so hard, or I don't know. It was great. So the other really exciting fight on this card was the other title fight, and Izzy dominated exactly in the way we predicted, and boy, are we happy. Omo Naija, arise compatriots. We are so happy. But it happened pretty much textbook how not just us, but everyone predicted it. Paulo Costa, good. Like all the fighters predicted this too. Paulo Costa comes in or tries to come in. You can't hit him. You can't hit Israel Adesanya just with hooks, which is Paulo Costa's main way of hitting people, especially not when he has short arms like he does. And you can't expect that Izzy's going to let you, come in and dirty box with you either. So it didn't look like Paulo had a real plan, or it looks like his plan fell apart early in the first round when he realized that Izzy's leg kicks were, really hurting him. And a lot of that is due to Izzy's placement of his leg kicks. One thing I want to draw attention to is Izzy was continuously kicking Paulo Costa in the right place. So right where the quad sweeps into your kneecap, there's a small divot. Izzy, and right there is a conglomeration of your nerves and some very, very light meniscus, but no muscle. Izzy hit that spot every single time, and it got super red, and we could all see it. And that's when Paulo Costa basically couldn't walk anymore. And when Paulo Costa basically couldn't walk anymore, when you can't move, it's really hard to take a shot. So then as soon as he took that shot that, got him down to the ground, where Izzy then mounted him and ground and pounded him to hell, that wasn't Paulo Costa's chin going out. That was his legs just collapsing.
Right. It was funny. Right before we recorded this, I was watching an episode from this boxing guy that I was watching. He's trying to branch over into MMA. And it was funny. He was saying that he thought that Paulo Costa had a leg tattoo.
Oh my.
And that's how badly Izzy beat up his leg.
Yeah.
And, it sucks as a fighter when you get to that point where you realize that the guy you're facing can hit you and you can't hit him back. It's a demoralizing feeling.
And it's scary. You could see the fear in Paulo Costa's eyes.
Yeah.
Right? It's terrifying because it's you can get to this guy if you can get to him, but you can't. And that distance is not possible to overcome.
Right. And, maybe, like I said, we don't really know what his game plan was.
Not at all.
But I think if he had somehow, but even thinking about it, I don't even know how he could have, chucking him, I guess. But, I think his decision to not defend the leg kicks in any way was his ultimate downfall.
I'm going to give my very stupid theory on what I think his game plan was as it looked to me. So one common thing you can do, which I don't recommend, is you can sit on your front leg. You can sit heavy and you can try and tank some of those leg kicks. And as they are coming in, you can counter. However, Israel Adesanya's legs are very long, and Israel Adesanya knows to move after he kicks. So doing that against a high-level kickboxer never works. They're just going to tear up your leg. Because it looked like at the beginning of the fight that Paulo Costa's plan was to sit heavy on that front leg and to fire back every time Izzy came in. But Izzy doesn't need to come in. He's just sniping you from the outside. And so I believe if Costa was going to win this fight, he was going to have to get in close. But I think the way he decided to try and get in close was just fundamentally flawed. I don't know why he didn't start checking him because, like, God knows. I feel like one or two of those and you would automatically go to check.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Again, that was a stupid theory, by the way, because like, don't quote me. I'm just saying that's the only thing I could see.
If you're a fight nerd, Izzy is so fun to watch.
Indeed.
Like I'm thinking about it. I was like, yo, he didn't land his leg kicks in that spot immediately. Like the first kick was a little low. It was a little on the lower calf. And then, like, if I recall correctly, the second one was a little bit higher. And then the third one, he found it.
Yes.
Once he found it, it was like muscle. It was like, it's crazy. It's like muscle memory. Like he found the spot and he was like, boom. He just hit the spot over
again and again and again. Didn't miss.
Yeah. And it's just like, that's like, so I don't want to call it this because like that's like his shtick, but like that was like some Naruto Sharingan
very
shit.
much some Itachi shit, man.
Yeah, like he like it was like laser focused. Like it got to the point where it didn't even look like he was like thinking about it. And
the thing was he wasn't looking at the leg anymore, right? Which is a hallmark of a good striker, is he's not looking at the place he's about to kick. Mm-hmm. Right? That's how high level he is. And you were talking about earlier, you and I were just talking, you were talking about the feints that he was incorporating and how Costa was getting tagged so bad that every single time he'd have to fall for all the feints because he couldn't afford to get tagged again. Mm-hmm. You know, and Izzy was using a lot of hip feints, so a lot of feints for his kicks to set up his hands. He was using a lot of feints with his hands to set up his kicks. It was high level stuff. It was a beautiful thing to watch.
Yeah, I think his hip feints are crazy because they're fluid. It's like all of his striking is fluid, but even his feints are fluid too. Like it's almost hard to determine. I mean, that's the point of a feint, obviously, but like his feints are so locked in with his like, you know, drilling that like his feint look like he's about to kick the shit out of you.
They fall into a rhythm, right? And it's he's using the momentum from the feint to go into the next strike, which is, you know, really how you're supposed to feint, right? If you're going to give a feint, you have to give enough of it. Like if I'm going to feint a cross to hit you with a 3, like a hook, you want to give enough of the cross that when you come back, like it's kind of like a rubber band. You know this concept, right? Like you basically, you load up the rubber band on one side and then you let it spring out. Right. And that's what his feints are designed to do. And it's absolutely gorgeous to watch.
Yeah. It reminds me of, Canelo has this really good body feint where he'll set up those Canelo's about. He sets up his body shots, but then he has this one where it like I don't even call it, but he like goes to the body and like you go down and he changes it to an uppercut mid punch. And like I don't want to call it this because it reminds me of like a question mark kick almost,
which Izzy was throwing.
Yeah.
Izzy was throwing that question mark kick a lot.
Yeah, he has the best one I've seen since Rockhold.
You know, yes, I agree. Question mark kicks are very, very good. I would say if you're a young fighter, don't rely on them. Your knee's not supposed to do that many times. But if you're as flexible as Izzy is, why not? I really liked Izzy's call out afterwards of Cannonier because there's really no one left for him to fight other than Cannonier. I think you brought up the point that he's beaten like 10 out of the top 15 contenders.
Seven
out of the top 15 contenders or something in middleweight.
Which is nuts. He's beat 7 out of 15 in 2 years.
So, like, why not call out Cannonier? Who else you got left, you know?
Right.
He's undisputably the king of middleweight. He's going for GOAT status. He's chasing Anderson Silva. I don't know if he's ever going to get there, but in terms of striking and in terms of being the best middleweight, he's very, very close.
You know what I want to see? And it doesn't even have to be like a real fight. It could be like a sparring match or like an exhibition. I really want to see him and Wonder Boy do something.
Oh, just like spar around, like just kick
Yeah,
spar or something.
or if they could fight, they could fight. But like, I just think that would be so fun,
Wonder
like
Boy's
a
too
nerd,
small to fight, is he? Yeah, but yeah, I
like a
understand what you're
nerd
saying.
fight,
It would be
like
cool to see them do like a point match,
yeah, or like a
right?
like Muay Thai sparring.
Yeah, or kick for kick or
Yeah,
something. But no,
but
it would be really cool to watch that. I mean, before Izzy, you would have to give the highest level of striking to Wonder Boy, right? Like if you're
mhm.
not going to go to Izzy, you're going to go to Wonder Boy. I think just in terms of pure striking and elegance, not necessarily effectiveness, but just elegance, right? Um,
Elegance and fluidity.
yes,
Yeah,
and I think this fight told us a lot about how high level Izzy is. It didn't tell us much about Paulo Costa. Um, so I don't know what happens to him. I think that the middleweight division, though, is in good hands for a long time.
yeah. He didn't call him out, but someone had asked him in the post fight about Cannonier and who he want to fight, and he also said
He
Jack
did call out
Hermanson.
Cannonier.
No,
Oh,
I was talking
Hermanson,
about the
Hermanson.
post fight. It wasn't a
Yeah,
call. I was talking about he wasn't calling out Jack Hermanson, but
Hermanson.
he
Yeah,
was
yeah,
naming guys that he could fight.
yeah.
But it's crazy. I'm looking at the rankings now. He's beat 3 out of top 5.
He wants to fight Till, but Till just needs to win
Yeah,
so he can fight him. I think that would actually be an interesting fight because that's, I think, the only person that could give him trouble stylistically, right? Because that's someone who's just as high as a striker and has the same sort of tools.
yeah. Even though he seems to be the respect that he's giving Cannonier seems like there's something there that he is
Oh,
at
because
least respectful of.
I think he knows Cannonier can fight, right? Like,
Yeah, I mean Costa can fight
no,
too,
no,
but
it's different, right? Styles make fights. So,
yeah,
like, I don't think he knows Costa's style can't ever beat him.
mhm.
I think he recognizes the fact that Cannonier's style can give him trouble. I'm not saying he thinks that Cannonier can beat him. I'm not saying that Cannonier can beat him. I'm saying if there is a style that could give Izzy trouble, that would be the style, you know?
You know who would give him hell if he wasn't washed up? I
Who?
think Weidman. If he wasn't washed up,
I agree. I mean, that makes a lot of sense to me. Yeah.
yeah.
You're going to
Um,
need someone like that to give him hell. Like, you're going to need someone that is competent enough at striking, that can mix the wrestling in, that can take a punch, that can work you against the cage. You're going to need someone who's an all-arounder, but has that specialty.
it's just so crazy looking at the rankings. Like he's beat Whitaker, Costa, Romero, Brunson, Gastelum, Tavares, and Vittori.
Wild times, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's pretty much it. I mean, there were a lot of other good fights on the cards. I think we watched them, but they're not necessarily moving the needle. We can review them if you guys feel like we should. Just add us and tell us the fight, and we can probably get on and talk about it. But other than that, do you have anything else for anybody?
Oh, not really. I think it's kind of a weekend for fights this upcoming weekend.
Oh
Holly
yeah,
Holm is back. Jermaine Durandamy is back. You're on the same card. The top ranked card with Jose Zepeda and Ivan Baranchyk, who basically are like Zepeda lost to Jose Ramirez at 140, and Baranchyk lost to Josh Taylor at 140. So they're fighting to be the contender to fight one of them again, I guess. But should be a good fight. But I think after this past weekend, it's not a big deal to have like a off weekend.
yeah, especially because like we've been inundated with fights recently,
Mhm.
right? We've had every weekend just fight after fight after fight. But all right, guys, thanks for listening. We're on everything, right? We're on like YouTube, Spotify. So whatever you want to get your podcast on, you can find us and follow us on Twitter.
Yeah. All right. See y'all.
Peace and love.